Guess who? It's me. So, this is the woven fringe earring video. And this is me trying to get my needle threaded. Wildfire, which is what I use for the top portion of woven earrings, is stiffer. And it's great for the woven section because it gives it a lot more structure. But sometimes when threading your needle, you really have to own it, which doesn't always go my way. And you know what? That's okay. So this is 2-drop brick stitch. And the reason why I do it 2-drop brick stitch is because I find that is a lot easier for beginners to learn brick stitch. So just like your pattern, we're going to start with 4 beads. Now, this is the woven earring kit in all its forms, in all its patterns, in all the designs. This is not like just your particular kit. You maybe happen to have gotten this kit, but this is for all the kits. That is the woven. I put 4 on and I just tied that in a knot so that they're sitting in 2 little sets here. I'm gonna arrange them in 2 little sets, kind of. So this is just how to do the stitches. This is not like your particular pattern. You're gonna have your pattern map for that. So on the side where my knot is, okay, I'm gonna go up between these 2 beads, not between, in. I'm going up in them. If you're new here, I go on lots of tangents. I make mistakes. I am human. It is the craziest thing. I'm picking up my wire guard. I'm going through one. Oh, no, apparently I'm not going through one side of the wire guard. Now I'm going through one side. I pinch it in my fingers to be able to like control where that thread is going. Now I'm going to pinch my wire guard to be a little bit smaller so that it lines up with the width of my beads. The top of the wire guard kind of looks like a ditch, and then the other side is a tube again. So I'm going down through the tube and through my next 2 beads. Okay, and I'm going to pinch it again to control where everything's going. So that's 1 loop around. I'm going to do a 2nd loop around. So I'm going back up through the next set of beads again, not the same ones I just came out of. Pinching it to control where everything's going. And then down through those 2. And pinching it also helps that the thread falls into that ditch instead of beside it, which will happen to you, and it's a little annoying if you don't notice, because that is a lot shorter distance than if it went through the ditch. If you don't notice and you have to go back later, that sucks. So I went under my thread bridge with my needle, created a little loop, and now I'm going through it to do a little hitch. And I'm pulling it to the one side. So that's how we start our piece. Okay. On your instructions, you literally will have a diagram showing you how to do that. So now, each time I start a row, I pick up 4 beads. Your 4 beads are going to be different than my 4 beads right now. So don't copy me unless you have this pattern. And if you're copying me trying to do it without the pattern, you're going to have trouble soon because a lot of this will be fast forwarded. I am skipping steps because I'm talking. So what am I going to do? I'm going to take my needle off and I'm going to undo these to tell you what I just did. Sorry, guys. See? Real life. Real life. Okay. So I added the 4 beads. Then I made the mistake of not telling you what I did next. So I'm going to put my needle back on and we're going to actually show you and tell you what I did. Isn't that nice? In a tutorial video? That's the best. I promise the whole thing won't be like this. Just portions. So I've got my 4 beads, okay? I'm going to go underneath the thread bridge from that row before. And my little beads will line up. I'm now going to go back up through that 2nd set of beads, okay? Now, before I pull it too tight, I'm going to stick my tail from tying this piece together at the beginning up through those 2 beads as well, and then tighten it. So I have my tail and I have my thread. Okay. Now I'm adding my second 2 beads. So every row, when you're doing 2 drop, starts with 4 beads and continues with 2 beads after that. So I'm going through my thread bridge again, and in this case I'm actually just sticking my needle in the middle of those beads because it's easier to do that than try and get it lined up with that thread bridge. And then I'm pulling my thread up towards where the bridge is. You are in charge of the beads. You will hear me say this all the time. And now I'm going up through those 2 beads that I just added. Okay. So brick stitch is all about using that little thread bridge from the row before to stack your beads. Okay, so again, we start with 4 beads because each row starts with 4 and then you continue with 2 after that. So I've got my 4 beads. I'm going under that thread bridge. My little beads line up to the side there. And then I'm going up through the 2 I just added. And then they stack down. And you'll see that the whole idea is you want them to alternate. You want your beads you just added to line up with the split between the beads in the row before. You want them directly over that bridge. So now I'm adding 2. Now, and again, I'm going through the thread bridge, the next one. I want to pop my tail up through these beads to hide it. After this, or maybe the row after that, I'll cut the tail off. Okay, and now I'm going to go up through those 2 beads I just added. Okay. Now I'm adding my last 2. Oh, the printer again. Yay. Anyway, I'm adding the next 2 beads. I'm going between my beads in the row before because then when I push up, I end up at that thread bridge. And then up through those 2 beads. I'm holding my piece snug and I'm pulling my thread snug. And keep in mind, as you're creating, you want to make sure everybody is aligning in the direction you want them to align, right? All right, next row. So this will be the last one I'm going to show you, and then it's going to fast forward till the end of the woven section, okay? So each row starts with 4 beads. Okay, I've got my 4 beads. It's important that you're using snug tension because otherwise when you go under that thread bridge, it's going to be too loose and everything's going to start stretching out a bit, and you don't want that. So I start with my 4 beads. Go up through the second 2. Pull it snug. I'm going to add my next 2 beads. And in this particular pattern, those are the 2 colors. Pull it close, and then I'm going to feed my tail up through these 2 beads. So nice and easy. Sometimes it's easier to do it when you're not recording yourself. Next 2 beads. And then my last 2 beads. A little trick about these outside beads, the first beads up the outside and the last beads up the outside, is as you're going through your beads, and you'll notice some are slightly taller than others, Those are pretty close. Some are slightly taller than others. You want to pick the ones that are slightly taller. So this one here is slightly taller than that one. You want to pick the slightly taller ones for the outside beads because then it's going to help your piece stay nice and straight across the end. Otherwise, you will find your piece starts to angle, especially if you're doing regular brick stitch. That people struggle with a curve at the end of that quite a bit. So you're going to keep going. For any width of woven earring kit you have here, this is the woven earring instructions. So your kit might be 11 wide, your kit might be 9 wide, it might be 13 wide, okay? For the double, the 2 drop. You're going to keep going until you get to that last row. So the 11 wide or the 13 wide or whatever you're on. And I'm going to meet you there. I'm going to meet you at the very last couple beads we put on, okay? So at this point, this is going to fast forward. Oh, just kidding. I forgot to tell you to cut that off. Really sharp scissors, lots of tension, and you're going to cut it off right against the beads, okay? And it helps to hang on to it so that you don't accidentally cut any other threads. Okay, now it's going to fast forward. Always fun and games here. Okay. As we are getting to the last little bit of this row, of course you can hear my prism banging on the window because the fairy's leaving, which if you've seen other videos, you've heard that before. As we got to the last little bits here of this one, nice and tight. So this is my woven top. Try and make sure that this is as straight across as possible. So you would have seen me in the video a couple times like stretching it and pulling it out, because as you've heard me say a number of times, you are in charge of your beadwork. Now many people like working their piece from the wide section down. I like working it the other way because I feel more in control. So we're going to hide our thread. So anytime it's a wider piece like this, I use Wildfire for the top, and then I switch to Nymo for the bottom. So I'm going to go up and weave my way up in the piece a little bit here. Probably go up 3 rows. Okay, so I am 3 rows up. Now I'm going to go around the thread bridge, which I find it, this will be fun. So I find it, my thread's coming out of here. So I'm going to go down between the beads right in front of my thread, leave a little loop. I'm going to come up the beads that are in the row before. So my needle went down through these beads. Okay, they went down here. So I'm going to come up here. I'm going to come up between this little 4 set. That was not it. That was it. So I'm coming up through and I'm going to go through the loop, because then as I tighten it, it's going to wrap around the thread bridge that is between there. And then I'm going to go up through the beads that are right above where I just tied my little hitch. Went above that again, and I'm going to do one more little hitch. So I'm going down through the beads that are right in front of where that thread is coming out. Leave a little loop. I'm going back a row and over. So it's like at an angle. And then I'm going to come up through that loop again. As I pull it tight, I'm pulling it towards the thread bridge that it's wrapping around. So it's wrapping around there. Okay, and then I'm just going to hide my thread up a little bit. Some people tie off their beadwork. Some people do not. It is completely preferential. I want my beadwork to last a very, very long time and have no hope of coming apart. So this is my way of doing that. Other people have found ways where just weaving it, zigzagging it in your beadwork, and they feel comfortable with that. If that's your jam, you do that. Whatever works for you. So currently, I'm just going to take my needle off. Okay, now we are going to add the Nymo. Okay. Okay. So all of your thread pieces are pre-measured in your kit. Okay, so each piece of thread is for a section of your earring. So that piece of Wildfire was one piece. It is not doubled up when using it. This piece of Nymo is one piece. We do not double it up when using it. We pull our tail quite far along, but it is not doubled within your beadwork. The thread is nice and strong. You do not need to do that with the thread that I provide in the kit. So we know that we wove our tail for the Wildfire up this side. So I'm going to weave my Nymo in through the opposite side, okay? That's why my tail is on here, so that I can see what I have done. So sometimes I will instruct you to go down that outside row. Sometimes you're feeling fancy, you can go down one in from that outside row. So I'm going to show you here how to do it by going one in from the outside row. Most instructions are going to show you, my instructions are going to show you to go down that outside row. This is so that you have a different example, and literally the whole thing is just going to be one over from those instructions you have. So we're pulling our thread through. Oh, not all the way through, because that would defeat the purpose. Simply a professional, boys and girls. Okay, there's my tail. I'm going to go down another couple rows. All right, so I went down 3 rows. I'm going to pull back on my tail. Okay, so I have about 1 inch of a tail there. Just like we tied off when we were heading up the other side, we're going to do the same thing to tie off heading down. So I'm coming out of these beads right here. So I'm going to go down the beads in front of them, just in between them. Being very careful not to pull too tight because I don't want my tail to slip out or I have to start again like moments ago. Now I'm going through the beads that are over and back one. Okay. So I'm coming here and I'm going to put that little loop around my needle. Okay. So the idea is I'm going through the loop with my needle. However your little fingers want to work that, you're going to do that. Now this is when it's very important to pay attention to your tail thread. Okay. I'm going to put it between my fingers so that when I pull this tight, it doesn't accidentally pull it all the way through. Okay. So now that is tied around my thread bridge. And then I'm going through the beads that are next to it. So I just tied onto the thread bridge there. So I'm going through here. Okay. And I'm giving it a little tug and I can tell that that's nice and snug. If it was moving at all, if it was like sliding towards me, I would do another little hitch in here. But that did not move. So I do not need to do another hitch. Now, I need over 2, right? I need to get over extra this time. So I'm just going to go down into that end one because that's where I need to be. And I'm going to pull it nice and snug. Okay, are you ready? We are going to add fringe. Now, I'm going to cut this long wildfire tail off. I'm going to leave a couple inches just so that this piece doesn't get caught up in what I'm beading. All right, so now we're adding our fringe. Each leg of fringe, you can kind of see it in the edge here, each leg of fringe will have a count and a color code, and all you're going to do is start by grabbing the beads you need, which in this pattern I'm grabbing 2 of that, 2 of that, 2 of that, 2 of that, 3 of that, 2, 2, 2, pushing it down my needle. And then I'm gonna do, then I'm skipping that color, 2 of this. Now this is where there's a bit of an ombre, so make sure you're following your pattern. I almost didn't follow my pattern because I'm too busy talking to you guys. That happens. It really, really does. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I need 7 of this one. That is 6, 7. Okay. So I'm making sure I'm looking at the back side of my piece, and there's a little bit of my fringy. I'm skipping the last one. Can you see that? Oh yeah, you can. I'm skipping that last one, and I'm going up through my beads. Some people love a super long needle for this. I do not. I prefer the needle I sent you in your kit. That's the needle I prefer. If you buy any of the creativity kits or a clutch kit, you'll have a 6-pack variety in there, and it involves 3 different sizes, or lengths, I should say. And then you get a chance to, this is the middle length, and you get a chance to try a shorter length and a longer length. So I went up through the 2 beads in my foundation row. This foundation row is going to be, this last row is going to be what I call my foundation row, okay? So I went up back through those 2 beads in my foundation row, and now I'm going down through the next 2. Okay. And then I'm going to, and I'm making sure that the wrong side of my work is facing me, which is why having the tails is helpful, because then I know I'm looking at the back side of my work, because this is going to create a seam along here when I'm adding my fringe. Okay, so now I'm on to the second leg of fringe, and I'm making sure to follow my pattern. Now your pattern, reminder, is not going to be the same as my pattern, so do not do what I'm doing or you may really regret it later. Make sure that you're following your color map, your pattern map, and you're just listening to me to hear about, you know, the steps you're doing, the stitches you're doing, not the actual colors I'm picking up, because that will be different for you. Okay. Push your fringy down to the end. We skip the last one, and then we go up through them. Now, a question I get quite often is, how do you, I, us, we, everybody, how do you add the fringe without it creating a gap between your fringe and your woven section? I highly recommend going to the thrift store and getting a piece of suede. This was from, I believe it's a jacket. This might have been a skirt. I'm pretty sure this one was a jacket. And it leather often on the inside of real leather jackets. It's suede on the inside. So this is like very, very low pile. It's just soft. It's not, there's not really like high pile on it, but it grips the beads as I'm working with them, which makes a huge difference on having some control. It really, really does. I learned this a long time ago. So as I create each bit of fringe, each little leg of it, I'm rolling downwards and I'm pulling my thread upwards, and it creates just the perfect amount of tension I find. I'm doing that every single time I'm adding another finger of my fringe. That's just how I do it. Roll it between my fingers very often, roll it on my bead mat, making sure that I like the way it's looking and it's not getting too tight and kinky as I'm going, because that will not go away. It's easy to fix your fringe afterwards if it's too tight. I believe there's a video on my Instagram. If not, I will post another video showing you what to do, how to fix your fringe before you tie it off, if you're finding that it's too tight or too loose. Sorry, not too tight. Either, I guess. Really, it's just adjusting your fringe after the fact before you actually are tying off on anything. How to kind of do a final once over on your fringe and make sure that you're happy with it. Fun fact, I have no idea if this pattern's going to work out because I just kind of made it up. Fingers crossed. Yeah, fingers crossed. Very often I will design that way. I'll know the palette I want. I'll get an idea of the design I want to do on the top, and then by the time I get to the fringe, there's a lot of playing that needs to happen there, because sometimes the colors don't look right, or the length or how it's sort of sitting isn't what I imagined. So often in the design process, by the time you see it, I have gone over it so many times, taken it apart, redone it. 11, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. This time, I didn't. This time, I painted it up in my program, and we're here. So I'm skipping that last one, and then I'm going up through little sections of the tail. So after this one, I'm going to meet you at the very end, okay? I'll show you how to kind of adjust the tail, the fringe, making sure you're happy with how it's all sitting. Remember, you're going up just through this bottom row when you're adding, and you're coming back down through that bottom row. That's my preference. Maybe other people do it differently. I don't know. Find a teacher that you like, who makes you feel inspired and excited, and you can handle listening to them talk. I didn't go on that many tangents this time. You are welcome, because I really do that a lot. Okay, so I'm going to meet you down here when I'm done adding that last leg, okay? I'm going to meet you up at the top of the last leg. See you in a moment. Okay, we are approaching our ending. So I have not tied off my fringe. My fringe is all just laying there. I'm happy with how it looks. When I roll it between my fingers and pull down like this, I'm not seeing any problematic gaps. If I was seeing a gap, the way that I would fix that is by starting at the end or where there's a gap, and I would pull on my end bead. So I would stick my needle through the very stopper bead at the end there, and I would pull it down to get rid of that extra thread, and then I would move to the next one and pull it down until I'm all the way around and I've pulled out all the extra thread. Okay, sometimes you have to grab with your finger when you've got a hold of it and wriggle it, and you're going to make sure that you're smoothing your piece, and you may have to go a few times. Tension takes practice, okay? It takes practice. Do not expect it to be perfect the first time. If it is, you've hit gold. Good job. So I finished my piece. My fringe is swinging. I'm happy. There's a little gap here. I'm not worried about it because I haven't tied off my piece yet. So in this particular piece, how I'm going to tie off, there's two different ways. You can weave up through here, tie the knot, and weave and hide it like we did with the wildfire. How I prefer to do it, often, depending on how tight these beads are. Now, those are pretty tight. So, Murphy's Law is if I try and force my needle through there, it's going to break a bead. I'm kind of testing it. Yeah, no, I'm not going to do that. So I am going to hide my thread up in my work because, yeah, don't want to break a bead. So I'm only going one extra row up because I want to make sure I'm tying off while I'm close to my fringe to keep its tautness. I'm going between the beads, the row after where my thread has come out. I'm on the outside row, by the way, because that's the fringe leg I was on. I went back a row in between the beads, and I'm tying up through around my thread bridge, okay? So I'm kind of adjusting where everything is sitting. I don't want to pull too tightly because I don't want this guy to like start crying with agony and be all bent. He's getting a little bent, so I'm going to pull him down a little bit. There, he looks happy. So I'm going to go up a little bit more. And because I want the tension in my fringe to stay very reliable, I'm stressing very reliable, I'm going to do another little hitch. Okay, so again, I'm going between the beads, the row after where I am. My tail wants to play and I don't want it to get stuck in there. I'm going to come up between my beads again. Go through that little loopy. Oh, good grief. So it hitches around the thread bridge. And then this time I'm actually going to weave sideways a little bit, which is an option if you ever want to do it. Your main thing is making sure you don't have too many threads going through any particular set of beads, because you don't want to go and stick your needle up in there and have it break a bead. Because Murphy's Law is, if you're going to break a bead, it's going to be right now when you just finished your whole piece. So in order to, I in particular cut my threads. Some people like the little bzz, the little melty bzz guy. That's the electricity sound I'm making, bzz, like that. I don't like it. So I pull my thread taut and I trim it. Super sharp needles, highly recommended. Super sharp scissors. Needles, super sharp needles are not always recommended, because just like when you're chopping wood, you might get it stuck if you're chopping wood with too sharp of an axe. That's actually not a great way to split wood from what I got taught. And a super sharp needle is not always the best because you might pierce your threads in there. So that is my earring, and when I am attaching my lever back ear hook, I can either have it looped already on there when I attach at the very beginning, or you grab needle nose pliers. These should be your first tool in your kit after scissors. I know that that is my back side, so I'm going to flip the piece over and hang it. Wire guards plus your favorite ear hook make for lots of nice swing in your earrings. So that, my friends, is how to make a woven seed bead fringe earring. 2-drop brick stitch. If you have questions, let me know. Bye, guys.